Well, good morning, everyone. I think we are ready. Welcome to this webinar, Scientific Storytelling 101, or How to Turn Your Science into Your Brand's Superpower. Well, I can see we have a lot of people connected. Thank you so much for being with us. We're very happy to share this moment with you. And I think we'll be spending the next 50 minutes, 1 hour together. So I will start with a quick intro to give also a bit more minutes to those who would like to join. And I'm going to start by introducing ourselves. So who are we? Well, we are Zorba, and Zorba is a science and innovation storytelling group. And what we love to say is that we are infused by science, moved by art, and powered by tech. And I can say that these three words, these three pillars very well define us and very well define what we do. Because what we do basically is helping brand science make the difference. And how do we do that? By sharing it in a way that is not only precise, but impactful, simplified, yet truly engaging. Because at Zorba, we do believe science that is well told can actually move mountains. And this is why we're here today. So to do so, we blend multiple talents. We have scientists, we have content strategists, we have creators, artists. We also have tech-driven producers with very strong capabilities in AI, interactivity. And I'm quite happy to say that I have very good representatives with me this morning. So I'm going to introduce myself first. I'm Anne-Sophie, and I'm CEO and partner at Zorba. But I'm very happy to be here with Pierre.
Hi, everyone.
Who is the head of our Life Science Strategic Department. And also Viau.
Good morning.
Who is the creative director and the head of creative excellence at Zorba. So welcome, guys.
Thank you very much.
Welcome on stage. And before I hand over the mic to them, I just want to do a quick recap of what we hope you will be coming home with this morning, what you will leave us with. We would like to share with you first a clear framework for structuring your scientific messages, how you can actually make them clear and impactful for your audiences. We'd also like to give you some practical tools on how to turn complex innovation into simple, engaging, and compelling narratives. We want also to share some insights from brands that have been successful at using their science to differentiate. And we'll also be asking questions all along the way, and I'm going to show you where you can do that. Please, this is very important because we really want this session to also be your session. So go for it, ask questions, and we'll take the time to answer live for hopefully most of them. And if we don't have time to do it live, we can also answer directly in the chat so that you don't feel frustrated that your questions are not answered. So this is the recap of what we're going to go through. And last point, just a quick, I would say, technical information. I don't know if you're familiar with the Livestone platform, but at the bottom right, you have two buttons. One where you can actually access the polls, because we'll be asking some polls all along the way to get to know you better, understand what your needs are, and therefore adapt also our content to what we feel is relevant for you. And you also have the questions area where you can ask all your questions, and really please do so, because we'd love to answer every question you have. I'm done with the technical parts. Now I'm going to leave the floor to you guys, and hopefully we're going to answer that question. What is scientific storytelling?
Excellent question, Anne-Sophie, and thank you for this wonderful introduction. So we actually wanted to kickstart this session with an actual definition of scientific storytelling, because we feel that it's a term that everyone actually uses, but very few people actually define it the same way. So maybe to be very clear on that, this is the very definition that we use at Zorba when it comes to scientific storytelling. To us, it's really the art of telling a science story for communication purposes. It's about building and creating a narrative that actually showcases science in a compelling and attractive way, rather than just focusing on enumerating a lot of benefits, a lot of data without a true story behind it. So to us, it's really what people will actually remember for your science and the reason why they will remember it. So I know that on paper, it might seem rather easy, but scientific storytelling is not about just like simplifying science until it loses its meaning. It's also not about adding, a lot of emotional layers on top of your science to make it seem stronger. In the end, you still need to stay true to your science. So it's really about taking your expertise, taking your science and your innovations and everything that goes with it, and turn that into something that people can actually connect with, they can actually remember.
Thanks, Pierre. Then now that we know what it is, why does it matter? And actually, before we dive into that questions, I'm going to share a quick poll with you guys just to understand how important science is for you and your brand. It's going to help us understand better what the audience is made of and be sure we really answer your needs. So I'm going to publish it now. Please answer.
Yeah, and maybe in the meantime, while the poll is active, I also want to add something that, storytelling is also not 100% about the science itself, even though we call it like scientific storytelling, of course. It's also, to us, very much about the perspective that you take on it as well. Because you can have, I don't know, like two brands or two different companies using the same stuff, for example, the same molecule or the same technology, or even claiming the same territory, for example, and they will still, be able to tell completely different stories in the end. So it's really about what you do differently from the others that actually really matters when it comes to storytelling.
So why does it matter? Pierre.
Excellent question. And for that, I will actually leave the mic to Theo.
So why does it matter? We think it can be broken down into 4 key pillars. So the first one, it matters because it captures the attention and provokes emotion. Secondly, it conveys a sense of expertise and credibility. Third, it makes science tangible and easy to grasp. And in number 4, it facilitates memorization and understanding. So what we'd like to do is to share a case regarding each pillar. And then Pierre and I will briefly discuss what we think would be the key takeaways on all of them. So firstly, scientific storytelling matters because it captures attention. And we know that in today's attention economy, it's paramount. And a great example of that is, we think, our SkinCeuticals film here. So I think we can watch it, and as you guys watch it, I can keep talking about, what the key takeaways are. And for us, it illustrates really well the power of disruption. And if science is based on facts, and facts are neutral, then we need to turn them into emotions so they can connect and capture people's attention. And that's what we do with storytelling. As far as the key takeaways for that examples, for me, that would be that the direction, the art direction, the way the film is set, hits the sweet spot in storytelling, in the sense that it does, it shows something that feels complex enough to feel important, but clear enough to feel memorable. And that all started with scientific facts, and SkinCeuticals, I think, also daring approach to art direction. And the other thing I would note is that the fast editing that you see at play here in this film, and the immersive camera work, keeps your audience focused all during the film. And we can easily imagine as well that this pace is really well suited to, say, adapt for social media.
I like that idea of memorability that you mentioned, because especially like in this era of social media where, we are exposed to like thousands of messages like every day, most of them like disappear almost like instantly. And I feel like science is quite like everything else in the end. You can have the most impressive breakthrough, for example, but it will actually means nothing to people if no one actually like stops a second to scroll, to just like have a look at it. So it's really about, being memorable, capturing attention is all about it. Always try, my main advice would be to, try to trigger like curiosity, some sort of surprise, or some sense of wonder, for example. So you will make actually your science like feel intuitive enough for people to understand it and connect with it like almost instantly.
Yeah, it's really about like breaking the codes and actually putting science where you would not expect it to be. So what's very interesting in this SkinCeuticals example is all the visual direction and everything that has been created that really took the brand to a new territory and something that was really breakthrough. But you can imagine it for any category. Here we are in beauty, but you can do that with any type of product. And you're going to see we have examples from other industries. And you're going to see we have many different ways to break the codes. I mean, it doesn't necessarily need to be like super tech, super premium. It can be very simple as well, as long as it triggers something different and creates surprise. So that's a very important point, yeah.
And I think we can also say that storytelling matters because it conveys a sense of expertise. And here we'd like to point out the example of the Tejas campaign that we created recently. And what it shows really well is that experts have this ability to tell stories to consumer in a very compelling way, and that this potential is often untapped. These are real scientists from Tejas, by the way. We think that experts are fantastic because they can explain complex ideas in a simple way, and that connects more efficiently. And if used correctly, like here, they build a sense of trust and not just a sense of authority. And to do that, you can accompany them in roles that go much beyond the stoic white coat wearing person, and they can be translators, they can be teachers, they can be guides, they can be coaches, etc.
Or brand founders. Sometimes a brand founder is the best science ambassador. Whether this person is a scientist or not, if your brand is anchored in science, and if your brand's founder is strong at embodying this, you can totally become the voice of your science. And this is something that can be really relevant when you're looking to humanize your science and everything that is behind it.
Yeah. I will also add that, so in this example, we decided to illustrate, conveying expertise with, expert voices. But I think that also in the end, it's also about the volume, like not necessarily about the volume of information that you share, but really, the relevancy that it has to your target audiences, whether it's, consumers or professionals or retailers or anyone, even internally. It's really about, subtle cues to infuse in your storytelling to really have that. So here, of course, scientists, but I think another incredible brand that managed to do that perfectly is, for example, Dyson as well, from another industry, where they, voluntarily showcase their engineers, for example, and do interviews with them. And I feel like this is something that more and more brands actually tend to do, real kind of like behind the scenes. Like we go into the labs, we interview people, they tell us like what is all about, their science and everything. And I think it's really key to have that, to really, convey that sense of expertise.
Yeah, and I think one last point before we move to the next one is that, in the era of fake news, and
misinformation,
you can say that. Science is real because it's facts, and opening the doors to what's happening in the labs and showing the realness of science and the realness of the people behind it is really a good way to share this authenticity with your audience and anchor your brand into something that is not lying and that is actually telling the truth in the most simple way. And this is very powerful when it comes to making yourself credible.
Definitely.
I think speaking of credible, it matters because it makes science tangible. And we know that bare science can be sometimes something fairly abstract for a consumer, and that they don't tend to think, right, this is complex, it must be true. It's more, okay, this is confusing, so it might be a little bit fake, a little bit bullshit. And a good example of how good scientific storytelling can make science tangible and simplify the message so it connects really well to consumers is, we think, this Regenerate film. And by turning to this kitchen science experiment, I think the strength of the film is that it provides a tangible demonstration of the superiority. When the eggs collide and the competitor breaks, we show unmistakable proof of the product superiority. And it makes the storytelling look like a demonstration more than an exercise in selling. And it's done, you have no sound here, but you have to imagine that the film has no voiceover, minimal overlay text to set up the experiments. It's super simple and it lets the experiment kind of speak for itself.
Yeah, I also really like that idea of, kitchen science, or at least like metaphors, generally speaking. They are very powerful to make science tangible, because in the end, most scientific mechanisms really happen at a scale that we cannot see or experience very directly. So storytelling really bridges that gap by giving a form, a shape, an appearance, or at least some sort of visual cues to the invisible, and that actually allows you to explain complex mechanisms with something very simple that people can actually hold on to, basically.
Yeah, well, actually, it makes your story super powerful, because if you have a complicated benefit to illustrate, if you find an easy and strong metaphor to illustrate it, just like this one, strong tooth enamel equals strong egg, which is very easy to relate to, mentally speaking, then you make yourself very strong. And one last thing that I wanted to add, the easiest the experiment, the easiest it is to scale it. And for instance, if you imagine an influencer campaign, you could totally ask them to reproduce the experiment and therefore generate millions of videos of people cracking eggs online, which is actually very good for your visibility, for your memorability, for your impact. And that's why easy kitchen science experiments are a very good way to spread your science to many people and touch many people in a way that is very engaging.
Yeah.
And memorization is our last point. How does scientific storytelling facilitate the memorization of your claims? And it's always been useful, the memorization, of course, but we think that now it's even more important as our lives are filled with imagery, messages, and everyone's competing for people's eyeballs. And here we'd like to take the example of this Hansaplast film. We think that what's interesting is that, first of all, the film starts off with a question. The question makes people think, and when we solicitate the intellect of the audience, always we build stronger memorization. And very much like the previous example, the use of a metaphor, the use of an everyday object, here the balloon to represent the skin, not only simplifies the storytelling, but makes its reasoning very easy to remember. You could imagine a whole series of these, I think, keeping the red kind of everyday object as the metaphor, for example. And that we think it's super important to build a strong strategy based on a scientific truth, but also to create a visual language world around it and to stick with it, so that the consistency itself in the creative and in the way you explain things, this becomes trust.
Yeah, I think consistency is really the key word here. If you want people to remember something, you need to build a cohesive narrative and a consistent universe that comes with it over time. So same when you develop a storytelling or just a simple story, scientific story, it shouldn't be, or you should restrain as much as possible for it to be just a one-shot moment. And next month you create another one, and then next month you change again and everything. Otherwise, people will be completely lost, and you want actually everyone to recognize you and return to that familiar place that you've created. So yeah, be consistent. That would be also my main advice on this one.
And I was mentioning earlier simplicity and scalability. I think this example here is also a very good one. How simple experiments can be very strong at showcasing your scientific superiority, and how you can imagine making that social viral online, because this is actually very easy to reproduce.
You can own it, right?
You can totally own it, yeah. So what we just shared with you are I would say the 4 key reasons why scientific storytelling matters. First one, capture the attention and provoke emotion. Second one, convey a sense of expertise and credibility. Third one, make science tangible and easy to grasp. And the last one, facilitate memorization and understanding. And I've just submitted another poll in the poll section, because I would love to know between these different objectives, which one make more sense for you and your brand, and which ones you feel are the strongest needs for you. Because of course, you don't necessarily need to address all these objectives at the same time. You can totally prioritize depending on where your brand is, what your market context is, and we can totally define what's the best solution, what's the best strategy for you, depending on how important each objective is. So I've just submitted the poll. Please feel free to vote so that we can get to understand better what your needs are. So yeah, that was, I think, our first part.
Mm-hmm.
We could move on to the second part, which is the 6 starting points of scientific storytelling. Before we do that, maybe we can have a look at questions. Do we have any questions in the chat? Anyone asking questions? I think we have a very shy audience this morning. Guys, we are here for your questions, so feel free to ask. We're going to take some time to answer. So you have the question tab on the bottom right of your screens. You can type them in and we'll take the time to answer. So I would say for the sake of time, we will keep running and move on to that next part, the 6 starting points of scientific storytelling. The objective of this part is really to give you tools on how to get started when you want to build a strong scientific storytelling. So I'm going to let Pierre and Theo go through this part with you. At the same time, I will keep an eye on questions, and please, as soon as you ask one, we're going to take the time to answer. So let's go.
Let's go. Third chapter. So yeah, hopefully at this point we've convinced you to do scientific storytelling. So now the question that we usually get is, where do we actually begin? Like, which part of my science should I put in the spotlight? So that's why at Zorba we have kind of like identified 6 points, like starting points, to actually get you started in your storytelling journey. And so each one of them lets you explore, I would say, different angles of your science. So if we begin with the first one, which is a hero active or technology, which is really like a single element. So be it, again, an ingredient, a molecule, a technology, it could even be a patent, for example, something like that, or a specific innovation that you own, but something that has enough uniqueness to actually carry the story on its own. So you can build your storytelling around it, especially when it's very unique and you're the only one on the market to have that. But yeah, make it at least very proprietary to your brand, because otherwise, if it can be easily copied, it's kind of a no-go as a starting point. It also doesn't have to be like super rare or extremely precious. A lot of premium brands like to do that. It can also be much more accessible, and if it is, just make sure that it's actually very different from the rest of the pack, I would say. But having that type of starting point can be very useful to build a special ownership, because people on the long run will actually like naturally associate this specific ingredient, this specific technology or innovation to your brand. And so same with the specific need or the benefit that they want, that they crave from it.
Do you want to add anything to you on the ingredient part?
No, I think it was very clear.
Yeah, so maybe we can take 2 minutes, because I see we have questions before we move to the next part. And thanks, guys, for asking. So we have a first question from Alexis. He's asking, do you see these scientific storytelling approaches relevant for both HCP and consumer, or mostly consumers? Which I think is a great question. I can take some time to answer, and then guys, please feel free to help. Well, actually, and we have the experience of it, these approaches work for both HCP and consumers. The starting point with this is that actually HCPs, they're experts, of course, but they're people. And what we know is that people love to be entertained, and HCPs receive a lot of communication all the time. And, creating a difference, creating impact, breaking the codes is also something that works very well to engage them, because they need to be engaged. So they work. And I would say that the main difference is not necessarily in the tone or in the way to do it, but it's more in the level of information that you're actually going to be giving them. HCPs are ready to receive more complex information than, I would say, standard consumers. And this is where you can actually leverage and make the content different. Don't know if you have any...
Yeah, I think like everyone else, they need to be hooked in somehow. And that, needs an insight, that needs to talk to what they think, their emotions. It's not that much different from any other consumers, but we might layer in more information, more complex messaging on top of that base that can appeal to everyone.
Yeah, being more technical doesn't mean being more boring as well, because in the end, so we talk about HCPs, but it can be, you know, B2B, generally speaking, a B2B audience. They are also humans. They also want to be hooked, as you just mentioned. So if you manage to do, you know, content or at least a specific narrative that also, you know, fits that objective, it will be a win basically for everyone, and especially for you as a brand.
Totally. We have another question from Geisha. And Geisha is asking, can you provide an example of different brands of the same product executing a visualization in different ways? And in other words, how did they each communicate their promise without repeating the same message? So if I understand well, I think this is okay. When I'm going to take an example just to make sure I understand well. And actually, the example is on this very same slide. You can see an ingredient here, a purple one that is called melanin. Melanin is an ingredient that is actually an anti-pigmentation ingredient, and is an ingredient that has been used by different brands and also by the R&I department of the company that this ingredient comes from. And we've had the chance to work on valorization of this ingredient for different brands, but also for the R&D department.
Yes.
And of course, the challenge was, how do we talk about it? It's the same ingredient. How do we talk about it in a way that is not always the same and that actually brings the difference? And here, the challenge is really to understand what makes this ingredient unique for each of the brand or each of the entity that is using it. And what we do, I mean, the way we do it, at least at a strategic level, is that we do mappings. We have this melanin ingredient, we map all the properties, all the competitive advantage that this ingredient has, and then we point out which one makes more sense for brand X, brand Y, entity X, entity Y, and we actually decide to very strongly base our message or our visualization on this very specific part of the ingredient. So it's just like a person. You imagine a person has different facets. Well, an ingredient is the same, and we will capitalize on the facet that makes more sense for the entity we're working with. I don't know if you agree with that, guys.
Yeah. I think you start with that angle. I mean, creatively you expand on this, because we always start as well from the truth, the scientific truth, the angle that we want to explain this ingredient from. And then, as you said, you find its personality, its job. How can you make something that associates with the brand? And you build up on that. So the more special its personality is, the more special the visualization will become. Yeah. And we'll make sure that in the animation, the colors, the shape, etc., everything is trying to express its job. So its specificity for the brand and how it's used.
Yeah, and I will also add that this is very true for, you know, products and ingredients, for example, or even technologies. This is also very true for specific territories or even areas of expertise. Some examples in skincare, we have longevity that everyone tries to claim nowadays. Microbiome in skincare that is very huge, but also in nutrition and the supplements world as well. So the idea is also, again, what is your personal take on that? What's the new perspective that you bring on the subject that is very unique to you? And then indeed it's about creating a wording specific to you. What are the claims that you have? What is the visual universe also? And what's the promise in the end that you bring forward?
Yeah, that's really, if we take the example of longevity, the question to ask ourselves is, how my take on longevity is different from the others. And based on this answer, we're going to focus on this and say, okay, this is your point of difference. Let's build the storytelling around that. And this is the starting point. One last question before we move to the next pillar, next part, from Amanda. I love the comments about science is usually happening at the invisible level. Can you give a few tactics or great ways to make the invisible more visible? What questions should I ask myself to help with this task? Well, it's a very good question. Because invisible doesn't necessarily mean very small. It can be invisible, but yet very big. You know, like if we work with space people, which we happen to do, the invisible is happening in the sky. It's like massive, but still people don't know what it looks like because it's so far away. Anyway, so I mean, the first question is where? Where is my science happening? First, And second, where is my science created? That's, I would say, I would even start with, where is my science created? And where is my science happening? And this is actually gives you the, the key places to look at if you want to make the invisible visible. Like, for instance, I don't know, if you are a brand like Dyson, where is my science created? Well, your science is creating in an engineer's office. And engineers are looking at motors and how these motors are going to be more powerful to, I don't know, hoover, like these kind of things. So if you want to make the invisible visible, this is where you can actually start. And if you open the door to your engineer's office, to the engineer's notebook, these kind of things, you give access to an invisible part of your science that can make it very strong for certain audiences. If you are making eyeglasses, your science is created also by engineers, but it's also created by people who actually craft the glass. This is scientific, and showing this is a way to make the invisible visible. And I don't know, if you're a pharmaceutical company, your science is created in a, it's more complicated in a lab, and then it's chemistry. So maybe it's more interesting to consider where your science is actually happening. It's happening within the body. And then the invisible you need to make visible is the body. And then you're going to think about mode of actions, biological representations, So it's really building this channel. Where is my science starting? Where is it created? Where is it happening? And based on that, you choose what is making more sense.
Yeah. And I think visually it can be through the tools of your experts that you mentioned in the labs, what the engineers are using. But it can also be representations that don't exist in your labs and are used to simplify the message, simplify the science, make this often very intricate, invisible things visible. And that can be, as Anne-Sophie said, it makes something that is super small, massive, like a planet, or it can be a little bit, so very metaphorical, or it can be a little bit in between the real life of the lab and a super, different metaphor.
Yeah, I think in the end, it quite depends on how willing are you to simplify your science, how willing are you to, bring it down to a level that is either very true to reality, and then, for example, in mode of action, depiction is really great, or you want something that very, quick and snappy for people to get, and here it's more, the power of metaphors that would be of great use.
Let's move to the second.
Yes. So first starting point was indeed a star active ingredient or technology. Second starting point that you can actually ask yourself is, do I have an ownable expertise or know-how? If you actually master something like anyone else on the market, if you have, I don't know, a proprietary process, area of expertise, or again, a way of doing things that cannot be easily copied, then this is actually perfect. That should be also one of your starting points. And I personally love this starting point because it also forces you to ask yourself, from a scientific point of view, what do I actually do successfully in some sort of sense, what is very so special and unique about me. And so your answer to that should be this, specific expertise on which then you can build your whole storytelling. So I know that it can be challenging sometimes, but it's always, a great opportunity also to see if you actually really believe in what you do and what you produce, and ultimately what you also sell to people.
And I think that's a great example here that we have on screen, is that it creates also a super strong core idea that creatively can seep into every image, every element of language, like everything that you show to the world, to the consumers, suddenly has this very, very consistent and strong message.
Third, yes, a specific mode of action. So I think it ties back nicely to what we just answered to Amanda's question. A mode of action can be very well, the core of your story, especially if it consists in, again, a decisive mechanism that really feels superior to convey to people. Even though, again, on the macro scale, it can be pretty much invisible, because it allows you to explain not only how your science works, but also why it actually works. So yeah, definitely ties back also nicely to our previous part, the second chapter, because it will also help you, appear as more credible, more trustworthy, tangible as well, because you again offer a clear and visual way for people to actually grasp your science and really feel it.
And maybe something I'd like to build up here, what is interesting about mode of actions is that you can actually create a balance between, very strong scientific realness, because you are really into how your product works. So the idea is to show exactly the biological processes that are implied in the science. And at the same time, this is the opportunity for us to trigger an artistic direction, a visual universe that is going to maybe take you away from classical scientific codes, and therefore create this emotion or this break the code intention that we were mentioning earlier. And therefore you have a very good balance between scientific accuracy and at the same time dream, So in this way, you can really reconcile the right part and left part of your brain and make them work together in something that is going to be very strong for the consumer or the HCP, because you create impact with very strong scientific truth.
Yeah, that's where you get an opportunity to invoke an imagery that can be out of the ordinary, that can seduce, that can create wonder. But either one you choose, I think it creates simplicity as well for the message.
It's really like embarking your audience into a science odyssey. It's very interesting in this dimension. Number 4,
starting point, so credible clinical studies. So maybe a quick disclaimer first. So we call it credible clinical studies, but it could have been also credible research, for example, because it's really, here about that layer of proof and evidence that is supposed to go with your science. Because if you have a level of evidence that is super, super strong, we think that you should actually just say it, and communicate about it, because not only, again, it will make you appear as more transparent. And in today's world, we talk about a little bit about misinformation and fake news and everything. Transparency is very important, and definitely we feel in our everyday practice that people want more and more transparency. It will also bring a sense of reassurance as well in some type of way. So I think not many brands really know how to do it well. From our experience, we often get that question, hey, we have tons of interesting data and research and studies and everything, but we don't really know what to do with it. Then you can actually turn it to a very interesting story that will, again, make people really trust in you.
Yeah, totally. And this actually echoes to Amanda's question that was asking, how can I make the invisible visible? Actually, clinical studies are part of the invisible world of science. And sometimes maybe you don't have the latest breakthrough ingredients. Maybe you don't have an expert within your brand. Maybe you don't have all of these points, but you do have a very strong clinical proof or a very convincing clinical study. But you don't really know how to share it or how to show the results, because it's true, it's quite complicated. This is the invisible. We can help you make visible. And you have many different ways to share a clinical study. You can have patients talking, you can play with numbers, you can actually recreate maybe some clinical measurements, many different things. But a clinical study is actually a very good starting point as well when it comes to leveraging the science.
Yeah, and we can help always extract a single-minded truth from that. And in this example here, but in many more, I think this single-minded truth is always the best jumping off point for the creative leap that will happen at some point on a project. And that allows you really to dream up that world that seems very surprising, that feels very unheard of, bring up the emotions, push the imaginary, but as far as possible, but you're always keeping tethered to the truth. And the stronger the truth is, the far away you can go creatively.
And actually, I'm jumping on a question from Alexis that is connected to what we're just saying. He's asking, can I ask as well where to start among all these possible scientific facts studies? Do you know what is more powerful or proven to get more attention? Well, that's a very good question, especially if your clinical study has a lot of data. How do I start with? So I would say the first question would be, where is your audience? who is your audience and where is your audience? Because we know from experience that depending on the geography of your brand, not every country or not every population is interested in the same things. You have markets where numbers matter a lot, and also where numbers have a strong meaning. Like, for instance, if you take China. In China, some key numbers are very strong culturally speaking, and if you have numbers that are connected to strong cultural ones, then it makes sense to actually capitalize on them. You have other markets where numbers are not that strong because too many numbers kind of, lose their meaning. But pictures, visual proofs are very strong. And this is countries or areas where you're going to want to go through before afters, for instance, like showing if you look at skincare, for instance, before afters, very strong, very important. I would say before afters are actually powerful everywhere, to be honest. And then depending also on your field of expertise, sometimes facts matter less than emotion. I'm thinking, for instance, about some medical areas where you don't really consider results, but you consider patient comfort, for instance. I'm thinking vision care, for instance, but I'm also thinking like very hard pathologies such as oncology or this type of areas. This is the patient's comfort that is going to matter more. And in this case, numbers are not that important. What is important are more verbatim, testimonies, people, talking about how they feel with the product or the medicine, so it really actually depends on where you are, what is your key market, and the second thing is who is your audience. So I think the examples I gave you were more for patients. If your audience is an HCP, then of course you're also going to address differently this question. Don't know if you want to build up on that. But...
Yeah, I would just add one thing that is more kind of like my scientific point of view, kind of on the question. To me, it's also, it also relates to the level of evidence strength that you have. So we have kind of like the perfect example here on this slide, because for LMEX, this was a meta-analysis that was done, which I don't know if we all know, but I think most of us know that this is kind of like the strongest level of evidence that there is out there in terms of research and science. And then you have, below that, like randomized clinical trials, then it's more like cohort studies, then it's more, observational studies and self-assessment studies that are kind of like the weakest. So I guess it also depends on, that strength of the evidence that you have of these studies that matters also a lot, at least to me, from my scientific POV, of course.
We also have another question from Megan that I'm going to take as well here. Brands often have multiple strong communication angles, star ingredients, clinical proof, like a lot of things. According to you, should all of these be communicated on the same platform, or does each deserve its own space? So I'll let you guys answer, but before you answer, just one thing I would like to give to Megan. Sometimes brands have trouble choosing what is actually very strong. So we're going to share with you the 6 starting points. We are at number 4 now, so we have 2 left, but some brands have the 6 within their DNA and within their story. And of course, it's very tempting to actually talk about the 6 because I have all of this, so why not share that to my community, to my consumers? But sometimes choosing is better and it helps be stronger, because the first question you can ask yourself is, which one between these 6 is really making me unique? And we were talking longevity earlier. If 25 brands are addressing longevity, then maybe this field of expertise is not what is going to make them unique, but maybe they have a very unique ingredient to address it. Then let's talk about the ingredient first, and this is what we should focus on, So first thing I would say, really choose your angles and don't use all of them if you have all of them. And then once you've done that, do they deserve specific platforms? What do you think?
I agree.
Do you want to go first, or do I go first? Just to quickly build on that, I agree that, so like the probably like top 2 very, very maximum top 3 starting points that are the most relevant to your brands. And after that, I would not necessarily recommend, again, communicate all of them under the same platform. You can have, for example, a master hero platform on which you put kind of like the for example, the hero ones, the hero starting points that you want to really showcase because they are here to really act as the pillar of your science and your storytelling as a whole. But otherwise, I would also not necessarily like chapter them too much because we still need some links. So yeah, definitely try to put the cursor at the right, at the right place. I think it's all a matter of balance in the end. It's not like 100% or 0% at all. It's just a matter of a good, equilibrium between all these starting points all together that makes something very cohesive. Because, for example, on X platform, you will talk about this, but on this Y platform, you will be more inclined to talk about this starting point instead, because this is a platform that is more suitable for this kind of, interaction with your consumers or your target audience. So yeah, it's all a matter of balance to me.
Yeah, and it's just a matter of budget. Let's be honest. I mean,
True.
depending on
Yeah.
how much you can invest in your scientific communication, it's really asking yourself, okay, who is my audience and where is my audience? And if you're both HCPs and consumers, which makes it, of course, more complicated, then really focusing on, okay, what is the key place where I need to be if I want to make a difference? And it's probably better to invest on that one rather than dilute your message on many different platforms. So for instance, if you are a Congress-driven brand and your HCPs have a very strong presence on Congress, then the Congress moment is very important. And this is probably where you're going to put all your energy and choose one strong digital platform for your B2C communication. And this can be already a very good start, You don't need to spread everywhere.
Yeah, but there's also, I think it comes back to questioning the audience and what are their habits, where should you talk to them, and also you don't have the same, I think, attention on every platform.
Yeah.
And some of these key points, these key pillars, I think necessitates slightly longer to explain to them, so you wouldn't talk to them on the same platform.
Yeah. I have a question, so let's go through the questions, right?
Okay. Yeah, sure.
And I think this is a question for Theo more. As a premium beauty brand, how can you show visual proof of efficiency without being too cold or losing the emotional effects?
I think it's a lot without direction, but it's a lot with direction as well. So you can make something look, cold, warm, everything, but the way it moves, the way it behaves, the way you storytell a film, you can really act on whether you want an emotional effect or not.
Yeah. It can look cold but feel emotional.
Yes.
So that's, I think, what makes it different. Like, I mean, if I come back to the Regenerate example, which is not at all premium beauty brand, so of course we're not in the same category, but in its own style, the look and feel is quite cold. I mean, the color code.
Yes.
But actually the story, you could not really hear the sound, so that was a bit of a pity, but the way the music is built, the way it's edited, all the sound design is bringing in that emotion that was not that strong in the visual. So it's actually one way to do it.
And the thing is what it means for people, because when we were talking about mode of action, when you go from the before to the after, this key moment of rebuilding, regenerating, etc., it needs to feel like what it means to the consumer. If it's a soothing that we're looking for, if it's like a boost of energy, then you can show the science, but in a way that's colored with a lot of emotion.
Yeah, and ambassadors are also a good way to do it, because you can embody your science, and it can be embodied by someone who is going to be in the brand's code in terms of premiumness, prestige, and everything. But the human touch of it is already bringing emotion, especially if this person is chosen in a direction that makes sense for people and if it relates to their insight. So
I think you're always dramatizing.
But it's actually a very good question, and it's a very good brief.
It's a very good
brief.
Yes.
We'd love to take it. Maybe we move to number 5.
Yeah, we have only 2 starting points left. 5. Okay, I really like this one, a strong promise, because ultimately your science matters because of what it changes in people's lives. And I think we can be very pragmatic here, as well. You sell products to answer a need, or in principle, you should. So if the benefits your science provide are not like super meaningful to people, it would be a bit of a pity. So it doesn't matter if you offer, again, like daily impact or something more aspirational on the long term. If you have a strong promise that connects your science to something, people, and when I say people, it's really like human beings, desire and yearn for, then it's actually an excellent way to start your storytelling as well.
And it's a good way to reconcile coldness and emotion as well.
Yeah, true. And finally, the sixth and final starting point is a dedicated expert team. And I think it's also one that quite answers Marie's question as well, because sometimes the most credible scientific story you can tell is directly the people working behind your science. So you talked in the beginning, Anne-Sophie, about an iconic founder, for example. It can also be a highly specific team of scientists. We talked a bit about thousands engineers, for example, that really embody your expertise. You can let them talk. They're actually the best people to do it. Like in the end, your laboratories, the people that are working in it are full of stories. And no matter if it's actually, success or failures, but they are full of stories that are, very worth to be told.
And sometimes failures are very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
It gives also the authenticity behind the science.
Yes. Exactly. And that's where you will be able to actually humanize your science. This is a word that you also used earlier. Humanizing your science, making sure that what's happening in your lab, what's happening in your R&D department is not like a complete black box that people cannot really, understand what's going on inside it. It's definitely also a very beautiful way to begin your storytelling journey.
Yeah. Yes. So that was our sixth point. Mm-hmm. So just maybe as a recap, we just shared with you. I mean, these are very let's get started tools. If you want to start working on your scientific storytelling, these 6 points are a way to just get started. So first point being a star active ingredient. Second one, an ownable expertise. Third one, a specific mode of action. Fourth one, credible clinical studies. Fifth one, a strong promise. And the sixth one, a dedicated expert team. I've just shared a poll here. I'd love to know if you feel that your brand has some of it, most of it, none of it, but I mean, just let us know, because that's always very interesting to know. Maybe one note on this. As I was saying earlier, it's very tempting if you have all of them to use all of them. We think this is not the best way to make your science impactful, because too many messages kind of, dilute the message. The key question to ask yourself is, between these 6 points, which ones really make me unique? Or on which ones am I very different from the others? And our recommendation is really for you to start building your science around them. And actually, this might influence the way you're going to present your science to the audience. And that's fine, because this influence is going to be what makes you perfectly unique and what makes you stand out in the crowd. So yeah, I would say choose wisely, because this choice is actually the key thing for a science that is unique, remembered, and really ownable to you.
Yeah.
Well, that's it for us, I think.
Yeah.
I'm just going to have a look. I think we have one question. Okay, from Megan. Thank you. Very interesting and helpful. Well, thank you, Megan, for joining. One last question. Briefing an agency can sometimes be challenging. What's the most effective way to brief you, and what information from brands matter most to you? Very good question. Mm-hmm. Do you guys want to answer that one?
Yeah. I will start with what is actually your intent. What's your objective? Are you trying to build trust? Are you trying to educate people? To showcase your superiority versus competitor? Like, what's going on basically? What are you trying to achieve? And then I would say, explain what your current storytelling is, if you have one, of course. What are the challenges that you encounter today with this story? Like, what works and what doesn't work? I know some brands are sometimes very realistic about it, but not all of them. So it's always useful to have your kind of like pros and cons about it too. Because in the end, I think these type of answers will definitely help us, select and choose between all these 6 points that we've actually just seen. And also, depending on your market, are there, specific like regulatory boundaries or constraints that we should be aware of? Cultural or market sensitivities as well. What about your competitors? How are they doing, compared to you? So all these types of questions are definitely super, super important into designing the storytelling.
Yeah, I think I agree with all that on the creative side. And I would say what I find very useful is always when we talk about if you feel close to a brand that's in another category. Say you want to rework the look and feel of your science or your brand, and you don't know quite where to start, and you're coming with us, but I don't know, you really love what Rimowa is doing, or you really love what I don't know.
This car company is doing.
Yeah, this car company is doing. This watch company is doing. Because I think it's always a really interesting start when you integrate some ideas from other categories, and sometimes we find it useful to ask our clients or future clients these kind of questions to kickstart the creative process.
Yeah, and sometimes you don't know what is making your science so different, or you don't really know where to start,
and it's okay.
And it's okay. Or sometimes but you know that you are not aligned internally between different teams or services. And what we do in this case is that we conduct workshops. So we can totally put people together around the table and brainstorm and refine and analyze and think about what makes sense and therefore where to start. And we also like to conduct interviews with your R&D people, because this also helps us understand what your science is all about, and it can be a very good starting point as well. And it's fun. I mean, we don't always know, so we have 2 minutes left. I would like to take these 2 minutes to really thank you all for joining us. It was a great session, and we had great questions, and I'm really happy we could go through them. If you want to keep the conversation going, we've just shared in the chat some links to invitations. You can totally click and just book a meeting with us, and we'd be very happy to answer more questions if you have some, so really feel free to do so. We will also be showing emails, I think, on the last slide, so you're going to have contacts to keep the conversation going with us. And just one last note before everybody disconnects on what's next. We'll actually be conducting new webinars coming soon for specific areas in the world. For Asia, so Asia is sleeping now, but still, we're going to be conducting some for Asia. We're going to also have some in Europe and for the specific North America, US markets. And these webinars are going to be roundtables with some of our key clients, and they will be part of these roundtables. And the idea is to have a conversation and share insights and experience on scientific storytelling that we have conducted with these very specific people. So for Asia Pacific, it's going to be Unilever and an oral care brand. For Europe, it's going to be someone from Danone on the Activia brand, and from the USA, it's still, a surprise. So we'll be announcing very soon who it's going to be, but this is also on the way. So if you really, if you want to join, you're more than welcome. We will share, of course, on LinkedIn and on all channels, time, date, and key speakers, and we'd love to see you there. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you very much. Yeah, and thank you for your kind words as well in the chat.
You have some emails. Really do feel free to just screenshot this and contact the people you want to relate with, and have a wonderful day.
Goodbye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.